Did we say we were going to do an outline, or do we just want to do it live?
You know what? We're ranty today. Let's just hit it.
We're ranty today. Let's do it. All right. Take it away, France.
Welcome to Tell Me About It, a podcast by SLPs for everybody. My name is Francie.
And my name is Maggie.
And today we are talking about neurodiversity. She's kind of having a moment. She has been, I feel like, in popular culture, definitely within the last 10 years, which is just like with it becoming more of a household term. I don't want to say pop psychology, but just in more common vernacular. And we're here to talk about it today. So with that.
Yeah, let's take it away. I would agree. I think that, I feel like I first started seeing this online only about maybe like 5 years ago. So like, it's really kind of like, I feel like the wave is maybe cresting at this point. Like, I think.
I would agree with that. I remember learning about it. Like, this was a term that was used in my grad program, which was talking about neurodiversity, the neurodiversity umbrella, what conditions were included. Did she immediately start barking?
Yeah, right away.
Diamond!
My dog, I don't know if I'll edit this part out. My dog is the light of my world, and she also will bark at anything that moves. So I'm going to go ahead right now and put her away because she will.
That was your one chance, Diamond. Lost.
She gets one chance. And she was asleep. She was fully asleep until, I don't know, because I have headphones on. So probably somebody sneezed 3 houses down and she barked about it. Okay, I'll be right back.
Diamond.
All right. Okay, so you first heard the term neurodiversity in grad school.
I heard it started talking about in grad school. I can't remember what class. I do remember which professor, but just talking about there is this descriptive term for conditions that fall under this umbrella, right? And so I knew neurodiversity to be a variety of conditions. Would you say that is the same for you?
Yeah, I think that I definitely first heard of it also in grad school, but I don't think I heard the term neurodiversity until later. So in my stuttering course, we talked about how, and also in my sign language courses about when we were talking about deafness and deaf culture, they were talking about this concept, but not using the term. And so I don't think I heard the actual word neurodiversity or neurodivergence until after grad school. I could be wrong about that, though. I've slept a few times since then, so it gets a little muddy, but yeah.
I remember the graphic that they used to talk about in this class.
Okay, yeah.
Because it was a little umbrella graphic that had like multiple conditions listed underneath it that kind of fell under this neurodiversity umbrella. Cool. And so it was definitely a term that I used in grad school. However, I have seen it much more frequently used now online and in social media spaces to talk about specifically autism and ADHD.
Yes, I think online I've seen it mostly for those 2 diagnoses. And then we'll get into it in a little bit. But I actually loved, off mic a little bit ago, you read the definition of neurodiversity from the Cleveland Clinic. And actually, would you mind reading that again? Because I thought it encapsulated it really well.
I have it right here. So the term neurodivergent describes people whose brain differences affect how their brain works. That means that they have different strengths and challenges from people whose brains do not have those differences. The possible differences include medical disorders, learning disabilities, and other conditions. The possible strengths include better memory, better ability to picture 3D objects, and the ability to solve complex mathematical calculations in their head, and many more. Neurodivergent isn't a medical term. Instead, it is a way to describe people using words other than normal or abnormal. It's important because not a single definition of normal exists for how the human brain works. The word for people who aren't neurodivergent is neurotypical. That means that their strengths and challenges aren't affected by the way that their brain operates. So why does this term exist? And this term exists because of Judy Singer, who is an Australian sociologist, who coined the term neurodiversity in 1998 to recognize that everybody's brain develops in a unique way. Like a person's fingerprint, no 2 brains, not even those of identical twins, are the exact same. Because of that, there is no definition of normal capabilities for the human brain. Thank you, Cleveland Clinic.
Yeah.
Thank you, Cleveland Clinic. This is a term that was meant to describe the beauty of unique brains, and every brain is unique, which I love. So
Yeah. And I think we talked a few episodes ago about ye olde standard bell curve. And so like when you think about it, yeah, there is that kind of like mass of people who all operate kind of the same way. But even within that, there's gradation, right? Like there's variation even within that. So, and something that they mentioned in that definition is that like even the brains of identical twins who have, you know, the same DNA are not the same. Because neural development is very complicated, experience plays into it, genetic predisposition plays into it, all
and
kinds of
also
things.
lived experience. You know, we talk a lot about, at least in SLP grad school, we talk a lot about neuroplasticity and
Yep.
how our brain acquires new synapses, prunes synapses, and the things that change the brain over the course of the lifetime. For example, one of my favorite statistics, which we have talked about before, takes 3 adverse childhood experiences to permanently change the language centers of the brain, right? So even twins, maybe one of them has more adverse childhood experiences, can have different language centers, which is crazy, right? So your lived experience is also changing the topography of your brain.
Yeah. Not
And
to
so
mention things like, which this, I don't know. Well, actually, and I don't know. Maybe this does kind of fall under the umbrella of neurodiversity, but things like acquired brain
oh, TBI,
yeah,
absolutely.
TBI. So if you have a pair of identical twins that have very similar upbringings and maybe have, you know, no aces. I don't know if anybody has 0 aces, but like definitely
Nobody gets out of this unscathed. Okay,
right.
Let's start there.
Nobody gets out of this without some bumps and bruises for sure, but have a relatively healthy and supportive upbringing. And then one of them is in a car crash in early childhood and develops a TBI from that, a traumatic brain injury. Their neural development and their brain is going to be different than their siblings, you know. Firstly, because of the actual injury, and then second, the trauma too. And everybody handles that in different ways. And so, yeah, it's hard to predict. Yeah, basically everybody is different. And that is I think what I really want to hit on is that is a natural part of the world. Like, I think that, oh yeah, this episode is probably going to be Maggie and Francie rant zone. Like this is a passion topic for both of us, and yeah, so we might dust off the old soapboxes, and
they never collect much dust. Let's be
they
real about
truly do not. Mine is squeaky clean, actually. But biodiversity is natural and good. We know that populations that have more genetic diversity are stronger, less prone to genetic disorders and illnesses. And it is a good thing to have diversity in a population. So when we're thinking about the human population and how genes mutate, how people like capital P, people in general, evolve over time, it is good and normal to have diversity within that. Neither of us are geneticists. We are not biologists, but we do have really strong science backgrounds and are kind of speaking from the experience of understanding how the scientific method works, understanding how research works, and understanding the like core principles that lead us to these concepts and conclusions like biodiversity and neurodiversity being good and positive things. So it's not a bad thing that there are multiple types of brains in the world. Thinking that way or saying that would be like saying it's bad that everybody has a different set of fingerprints. Admittedly, people having different types of brains can cause a range of ease to difficulty of like operating in the societies that we have built for ourselves, because we have kind of built society around one kind of type of brain and psyche. And we can talk about that a little bit later too. So what we wind up with is people who have big divergences from that needing more support to operate within the system that we have built.
Well, and you touch on something that I'm really glad the Cleveland Clinic definition touches on too, which is there can be strengths and weaknesses with all of these different, with all the differences, right? Just because you are neurodivergent does not mean that this is a bad thing. You might have different weaknesses or things that you're overcoming. However, this also can come with some really awesome strengths. And I think, once again, you and I kind of talk about this, and this is a theme on this podcast too, which is the nuance that comes with both of those things and the value in appreciating both. Or maybe not appreciating, because it's hard sometimes to appreciate differences and weaknesses. However, being sensitive to that and making sure that people get the accommodations that they need to be successful. And so this is a really fun, nuanced topic that Maggie and I kick around a lot when we talk in our free time.
Yeah, we talk about this off mic a lot.
A lot.
A lot. And I think the reason for that is because neurodiversity is really having her moment online right now. A lot of professionals, I mean, obviously both of us follow SLPs online, and we are on that kind of like internet space of speech language pathologists and other allied health professionals, and disabled self advocates themselves talking about this concept. And so I feel like we definitely get to see some good takes, some hot takes, some misguided takes. We get to see it all. And we are both obsessed with our jobs and crazy passionate about this. So yeah, if we meet up for drinks, we wind up talking.
Sometimes we'll just text each other and be like, you know what, actually,
yeah. And another thing.
Oh my goodness. And so kind of going back to neurodiversity and going back to that kind of broad definition, what are some of the things that are included with that? Because when I first learned about it, I was surprised about what all was included in the neurodiversity umbrella. Like I said, oftentimes it's easy to think about autism and ADHD and these things, but it includes so much. It can include things such as, let me pull up my list, things such as obviously autism, ADHD, but it can also involve learning disabilities, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, and dyslexia. Which I think is really fascinating because what a brain difference. And Maggie's very passionate about dyslexia specifically.
Totally.
And that's kind of a funky one too, because that one kind of blurs the line of language disorder and brain difference, which I feel like a lot of these conditions do.
Yeah.
Or a lot of the things that fall under the neurodiversity umbrella do, which is very fascinating. Mental health disorders, bipolar, OCD, anxiety, depression can all follow under the neurodiverse umbrella. Prader-Willi can fall under the neurodiversity umbrella, Williams syndrome, Tourette syndrome, other types of, I think I already mentioned anxiety, but the one that's I'm most passionate about is intellectual disabilities, also falls under the neurodiversity umbrella. And so there's a couple other things. Down syndrome also falls under here, and a couple other conditions that I just exist that I have not had the access to naming.
And so something I wanted to point out about a few of those is that some of those syndromes, especially that you listed, also have physical differences that come along with it. So it's a brain difference. So we talk about sometimes in the disability world, we'll talk about visible versus invisible disabilities, how dyslexia is an invisible disability, whereas Down syndrome is a very visible disability, right? There's a phenotype that goes along with that, very distinct facial features, etc. So, but with neurodiversity, we're talking really specifically about the brain. So it's kind of like a yes and. It's that comes with this different neurotype and also comes with some physical differences too. I think Prader-Willi and Williams syndrome have really specific phenotypes. So
absolutely. And so, yeah, specifically talking about the brain differences with all of these is kind of the beauty of it. I don't know. I think brains are so beautiful. And I think all brains are so beautiful regardless of, I don't know, maybe that's a little poetic, but I think it's really fun. And I think that's part of the reason why I love our job so specifically, is because you get to see so many different ways that humans exist. And our brain is our little, if we think about it like the computer that runs this hardware, it's the thing that really shapes us. And so I don't know, I think it's really special. But yeah, neurodiversity is a much bigger world than just autism and ADHD. And so it's easy to get caught up in these two very specific types of neurodiversity when really we're talking about a huge spectrum of strengths and weaknesses.
Totally.
Because once again, I really love the way that Cleveland Clinic said that this can come with things like within autism, things like giftedness, or like advanced mathematical abilities or savantism or what have you. But it can also come with weaknesses like sensory differences. Because let me tell you, as somebody, I don't necessarily have any type thing that would fall under the neurodiversity umbrella, but man, let me tell you, the seam in my socks will get me one of these days. I'm wearing a tagless sweatshirt right now for this reason.
Yeah, if you want to see a grown woman melt down, stick me
Oh.
in the sun with no sunglasses or hat and no option to go inside, and I will absolutely freaking lose it.
Absolutely.
That
Which
is a
once
big
again,
sensory. Oh, I can't.
oh
I cannot handle
my
it.
gosh. And I feel like sensory is also something that has, within the past 10 years, really come to light, which I'm glad we're doing because I think it's so important. I think it was something that was not considered a lot when we talk about disability. However, this goes back to the beautiful spectrum that is brains, because while we're not necessarily have a condition that would make us neurodiverse, our brains still process these information differently. Like,
Yeah.
I will absolutely lose it. My mom had to buy the special seamless socks as a kid because like it was like a melt. It was a meltdown.
Actually, we talked about this a little bit off camera, but I will share on camera too. I feel like personally, I have like how did I say it earlier? I don't remember. I have like kind of
You have a diagnosis. Can I just speak for you? My God,
go
so
ahead,
sorry.
because I can't even remember what I said. Go for it.
You have a diagnosis that would qualify you to be under the neurodiverse umbrella. However, you do not consider yourself to be neurodiverse, and that is not something that you identify or you have as an identifier about you, right? Some people take a lot of identifying, like a lot of identity in this label. Great,
Totally.
more power to you. You're just somebody who doesn't. So
Yeah, so I have generalized anxiety disorder. I've had it since puberty. My anxiety, when untreated, is debilitating. I can go throughout my day, I can work my job, I can hang out with people, but then I empathize a lot with experiences that I've heard other neurodivergent individuals describe as like burnout, of like you get home and you are depleted. Things that are easy when I'm medicated and supported are damn near impossible. Are we cussing on this? I didn't.
we are now.
We are now. Damn near impossible when I'm not.
Another fun fact about both of us, Maggie and I are both potty mouths, and we've really
God.
tamped it down. We have really tamped it down for the internet.
I'm actually proud of us. We reined it way
in.
Yeah. I think we talked about at one point, we were like, let's do like, what
biblical
is it?
cussing.
Biblical cussing. Like damn, hell, and ass.
Yes.
Anyway. But so that being said, this is something that like, I think there is a level of like identification to this of like, and what I mean by that is like, you kind of, this is like a part of an identity for like somebody too, which I don't really claim to be neurodivergent. I don't claim that label for myself. And there's no reason for that other than I just don't. I just don't. And I think that's fine. But I will say like having this diagnosis and having this kind of like thing that I have learned to work with and support has given me a level of empathy for people who have similar, similar life stories. Oh, something I wanted to touch on really quickly. I had a thought. So when you were talking about giftedness, so these the word divergent, I think, has a bit of a negative connotation because what it means is that you are like, sorry, Missouri in the fall too. Trying really hard not to sneeze right now. Divergent, disability, those types of things that are going through this kind of renaissance of reclaiming, that term and giving it a positive connotation, which is good. I think that has to happen because those words have a negative connotation. So when we are talking about neurodivergency, we are not using that word to be a nice version of saying brokenness or badness or something's not working problems, right? We're not doing that, because these can also, the term neurodivergent can also be used to describe giftedness. So we're talking about like the Mensa folks, like people that have IQs and intellects that are well above the kind of like mean, the general average, which again, we think of that as something that is solely a good thing. And that's a way that it's portrayed in the media a lot. But when you are that far from the mean, it's gonna come with challenges.
So it can come with challenges. And one of the biggest things that kind of grinds my gears, specifically when we talk about neurodiversity, is that just because something is deemed a moral good does not mean it's not disabling. Also, morality and intellect has no connection. Let's get that out there. Like, I was going to talk about this later, because this is something that like drives me bonkers, is that when we start, we'll talk about it when we talk about intellectual disabilities. Be nice to me and my friends, first of all. Like, I don't, anyways, we'll get there. But too often, specifically in the educational setting, we will see people be reluctant to request special education services outside of gifted education for kids who have IQs. However, twice exceptionalism, which means that we have giftedness and another type of condition, usually autism, that can be a condition that's disabling in and of itself, right? Mm-hmm. Just because you have these incredible intellectual capacity does not also mean that you will have differences in other ways that are not problematic, but just like hard and tough, right?
You can be 2E with dyslexia too, that twice exceptional.
Absolutely.
Because dyslexia has nothing to do with intellect. Absolutely nothing. Most people with dyslexia are cognitively average to a little bit above average. And so it's totally possible to have that person. And the inverse is also true. It is possible to have dyslexia and a cognitive impairment or intellectual impairment. Absolutely. But it's 100% possible as well to have cognitive giftedness, intellectual giftedness. So to be like, way above the average IQ wise, and also have dyslexia. So you've got this person that on the surface level is very smart, is excelling in school, and cannot read, like is really struggling to learn to read, because it has nothing to do with intellect. So
absolutely. There we go. and it's sometimes difficult for people of the, the middles of our bell curve to sometimes understand that, unless you work with this kind of like we do, because it's so easy to get caught up in intellectual ability and way over ascribing value to that. And so this getting into kind of my passion topic of working with people with intellectual disabilities, too often we are putting so much on intellectual capacity, to the point that we are missing areas where we could be helping people, if that makes sense. Yeah. Our kids with giftedness, maybe they need social support, maybe they need pragmatics work or something like that. But they're gifted, so why would we do that? Often. Yeah. But on the other side of things, I so often see conversations of like, well, they're just not that high IQ, so why would we do that? Or, well, this is so tough. ID is an important part of the neurodiverse umbrella, and not a lot of people want to talk about it, because it is, in our American society, we put a lot of value in what a person can do. And for my kids, for whom maybe what they produce is not a lot, but they still have value, people will not view them for the things that they can do, but rather the things that they can't. And so
also just who they are.
They are.
I've been thinking about this concept a lot this week in particular. Date-wise, today is September 27th. This episode will come out a little bit later, but on this past Monday in real time was the Trump and RFK press conference about Tylenol and autism, or acetaminophen and autism. And I think that kicked off a lot of stuff online about autism, but also like
Yes, but
The
also I
way
think this
that, yeah.
whole administration has been kind of demonizing of kids or adults with level 3 autism for whom also potentially have co-occurring intellectual disabilities, specifically with using phrases that are really hurtful, talking about like, oh, there's a specific quote that I can't think of because I'm pretty sure I have literally blocked it from memory at this point.
Yeah.
Um, and just talking
We,
about what a life is value or calling it like a nightmare or stuff like that. And this is not to say that like
yeah.
their lived experience isn't hard. However, this is a therapist begging you to see the humanity of a person.
Oh my God.
Um,
Yes. That's
and
it. I am not going to be the person to take the rainbows and butterflies route. Like this is absolutely like autism is not a cakewalk for most people that have an autism diagnosis. It comes with challenges. Sometimes it comes with significant challenges. A lot of people with autism will have high support needs and will never live independently and will need support forever. And that is really, really hard. So I'm not saying, I am like fully acknowledging that. But I think what what has happened is we've made this diagnosis about what people can still do and produce and contribute. And I would argue that production, contribution, and like doing are not essential parts of being a human. So, like, it does not matter to me if a kid who will become an adult never contributes to society. As a therapist, I am seeing that person as a human being and recognizing their humanity with dignity. And I'm going to support them the best that I am able to, so that they can have a full and happy life, whatever that means for them, right? But I feel like there's so much, it's a lot of people, and even autistic self advocates who are kind of at those lower support levels, who have careers, who have families, are saying, like, well, that's bogus because look at what I can do. And I'm like, that's awesome that you can do those things.
that's great, but we're missing the point here, which is once again, we need to decenter that kind of like capitalist mindset of production when it comes to human value and recenter the joy of living. Because I went to a training. It always comes back to this pod training for me. That was such a big experience.
I want
And
us to
something
do an episode where you just
I
talk
would
about
love to
pod.
talk. It was so magical. And one of the things that Gail Porter, the creator of Pod, talked about was and I hear this word flown around a lot with the neurodivergent acceptance movement, which is presuming competence. And I would say that that specific semantics of presuming competence goes to support this production mindset of human value. I think that that specific nomenclature used in the disability space, I understand the heart of it, which is you always want to assume the best intention. You never want to assume that they can't do. You always want to assume what they can. However, in this kind of production mindset, and specifically in this like concept that you and I are talking about, when people can't, that is often, or when they are proven, heavy air quotes, to be not competent, it comes back so harshly. And one of the things that Gail recommended was switching that mindset from presuming competence to having open expectations. And I know that's a game of semantics, but I think it means so much because regardless of intellectual ability, people are capable. And so incapability and competency are not the same thing. And so to, regardless of intellectual ability, give people the opportunity to grow to their greatest potential is fabulous, and we need to be doing that. But when we use a specific competency, we are so hateful against the people who are not competent. And that bugs me.
Yeah.
Because once again, capacity does not equate to a human.
Mm.
Feeling the sun on our skin, being able to share in the joy of what it means to be alive.
Loving
That's
someone
so
and being loved by others is
loving
more
someone and
important than what
yes,
we're able to
Margaret. Yes, Margaret. And so from the speech standpoint, regardless of how simple somebody's thoughts may be, I want to be able to have them share that with the world, right? That's kind of mine. And that's another Gailism. Galeism, another Gale quote, which is regardless of somebody's intellectual capacity, their thoughts might be simple, but they have the right and the dignity and the humanity to be able to share that with the world. And so it just irks me so deeply. And I understand my husband constantly tells me, he's like, Francie, your mindset on this is not held by most people. And whenever we present this, it's so easy to be like, well, you know, give points to the latter. However, I realize that this argument is like totally in a separate train track from the common conversation that's happening online right now about autistic people, specifically with this political administration. However, I want to propose this alternative viewing of disability because, my God, if I was
Yeah.
only measured for the production and the value that I like brought to my job, I would be a miserable person.
Yeah.
Because there's so many other things that like I do as a human being that I want to be valued over than just my job, which is saying a lot because my job is a big part of my personality.
And I think, like, to that point, I don't think that anybody who is advocating for autistic people is making kind of making kind of the opposite point of what we're saying. I don't think anyone's doing that on purpose or maliciously.
I agree with that. I think we're just,
I think people who are advocating online for the autistic community are doing so with love in their hearts. Like, I don't think that I think that sometimes, though, it has this unintended consequence of alienating about a third of autistic people and families because they are high support needs individuals and feel left out by this conversation. And B is kind of making this point, not explicitly, but it is the logical conclusion of the point. Like, if you keep following that thread to the very end, that production and ability and contribution is what matters. I don't think anyone's doing that on purpose, but I do think that that is what's happening.
No, I completely agree with that. And again, coming back to my husband's my biggest op, apparently, because he and I argue, maybe not argue, we have conversations about this, and he plays the devil's advocate a lot.
Our husbands are very similar, and that my husband is my biggest op is so relatable. I love my husband.
He is my biggest supporter.
Yeah.
He is my best friend. And that man will be like, have you thought about it this way? And I'm like,
nah. And you're like, no,
stop that.
Disagree with me blindly. Yeah.
Right.
Same.
He will often just like stop my arguments, or like when we're talking about kind of the this of it all, right? The general existence of where we find ourselves now. He will often present to me just the simple phrase of just like, hey, Francie, you're not going to win against emotional appeal. And I'm like, dang it.
Oh my gosh. Ain't that the truth?
Oh my gosh. So anyways,
yeah,
that's kind of an aside. You can cut that if you need to, but
wait, we don't want to tell everyone that our husbands are our greatest ops.
Like, well, and he kind of is. I love him dearly, but he's constantly like, have you thought about it this way? Like, oh, here's a really good point counter to what you're thinking. And also, fun fact, I'm bad at arguing. Like, I'm just like somebody who's not inherently good, which for somebody who's a communication specialist is bonkers, by the way.
Yeah.
But that's just not something I'm good at. And Jack is a master at arguing. And so he will talk circles around me sometimes, and then I just sit and pout. So I digress.
I will. Me and Turner are both like, Turner's a contrarian, and I think I'm really good at arguing and missed my calling as a lawyer, but I would hate that job. But so we get into the contrarian versus person who loves to argue battle. And so it's just
no.
Anyway, yes. I probably will cut that out, but
no, that's fine. But one of the things
so if I do cut that out, you will never win against emotional appeal
ever. And that's part of the reason why I'm having such a hard time kind of like putting my thoughts into the universe right now, specifically when it comes to this topic, because there's so much emotional charge to having these conversations. And I'm trying to present this in a way that is just shifting what we're centering in these conversations. I'm not trying to present one thing as better than the other. I'm trying to present a new perspective, which is people who exist within the neurodiverse umbrella should not be judged based off of their capacity, should not be judged based off of their ability to produce, but rather should be viewed as people. We really think it wouldn't be that hard. But what it means to be a person is not what I can contribute to society, but rather my enjoyment of this crazy thing that we call life.
Yeah.
And I want people to be able to enjoy the sun on their skin, to enjoy a day at the lake. I love chai lattes. Let me sit and drink a chai latte. And for whomever else loves to sit and drink a chai latte, I hope you have one too, right? That's enough for existence. And I realize that's very idyllic, and I realize that that's not, according to my husband, a very good argument. But
well, now I think we've referenced it too much that I can't.
Too much. Leave it in.
Leave it in. Our husbands they're great. They're brilliant.
And I love them very dearly.
Yes, they're our best friends. We love them so much.
Yeah. If we do end up cutting it,
we do be arguing. So
yeah, we do be arguing. The too long didn't read version of whatever the heck we just cut out of it is that my husband's better at arguing than me, and it drives me nuts. Okay. And so we love each other very dearly. We are each other's best friends. We're great supporters of each other. This is not an I hate my husband conversation. It's he's objectively better at it than me. And I have a great lack of arguing ability. Oh my gosh.
I will fully cut this comment out, but I think your Jesuit background and my my penchant for Christian mysticism is really jumping out here.
Girl, let me tell you,
conversation.
Love Christian mysticism. And I will go on to reference, like, I came from, this is where my brain is. And this is my ideological background on this, is the fact that I went to a Jesuit school for 6 freaking years. And that shaped a big part of my clinical practice, which was believing that we are caring for the whole person in our treatment of whoever comes across our caseload. I am treating not just their symptoms, but them as a whole person. And part of that is their humanity. It's not just their speech and language differences, but their humanity. And I feel like I would be a worse clinician if I did not have that centered at my practice. Yeah. Truly.
Go sorry.
No, go ahead.
This week at my small group, we were going over Genesis 1 and talking about what it means to be made in the image of God. Because I was like, the image of God cannot be man, man. And it also cannot be white Jesus. So, like, what is it? And I talked about, like, to that group of people who I barely know. I was like, I have looked into the eyes of severely disabled children and thought, we share our humanity. Like, whatever else, I'm like getting emotional talking about this.
Right.
Whatever else
We're never beating that emotional appeal. We're not beating the emotional appeal.
But like we share that. So whatever it means to be made in the image of God, I don't know. Whatever it is, it has to be big. It has to encompass disability. It has to encompass the stuff that we see. Like it has to cover all of this, because otherwise I don't want it.
I don't want it.
Otherwise, get it out of here.
Right.
Excluding part of the population that is worth it. That is worth it. Dignity and care and love and.
No, I am in complete agreement with that, and I think that's why it pisses me off so much that when I observe the conversation about autism online, we so often leave out our level 3 friends. And that's so sad, because they are just as capable. They are just as worth being a human, and they are still people.
They are just as human as we are.
They are just as human as we are.
Yeah.
And they are worth all of the accommodations. They are worth all of the therapy. They are worth everything that we can give them and more. And we should be giving them more. And so when I hear political figures saying things hateful, or when I hear level 1 people leaving them out of the conversation, I feel like we're missing such an important piece of what it means to be neurodiverse, and such an important piece of the human experience. I mean, truly, we're missing that big piece of what it means to be human, because this is their human experience too. And so, anyways, this was a real deep philosophical conversation, but
Yeah.
God, I think about this all the time.
No.
I think about this all the time.
And I
And
think that, like, I would go so far as to say is, like, if you are a person who works with this population in some capacity and you're not thinking about it, you need to start.
you need to start thinking about it, because it so much of our job, in our very first episode, we talked about how this job, specifically being an SLP, is such a human job. It is truly, communication is something that is beautifully afforded to humans, and everybody should have access to that. And so it's hard to separate being a speech therapist from the big philosophical questions of what it means to be human. And so I would posit to all, or I would propose to all SLPs to really think about your role and what it means to help other people access, or help other people understand your client's humanity, what it means to be able to share in that connection with somebody who might have communication differences and cannot often access that unique human trait of communication. And how can you, as a therapist, promote that to the world? And so, I don't know, man.
Yeah. And honestly, I don't know, girl. I don't know how much of this I'll cut out, because I think that we are hitting on something here, which is that, like, I mean, it is just that. It is just humanity. And, like, we can't separate emotion from this conversation. It's impossible, so don't try. Like, we can't separate lived experience from this conversation. It's impossible, so don't try. Like,
Right.
you
And
know,
I think
we
this
have
comes back
to,
to you go first. You go first. I'm so
we have to have this multifaceted, this, like, kaleidoscope view of, like, we are bringing our philosophical frameworks into this. We are bringing our emotions into this because we have to. Yeah, anyway.
No, I agree with that. And disability is so messy, right? And I don't mean that in a literal sense. I mean that in a truly, like, tangle of philosophy. Disability is just a tangle. And so, but it's a tangle that is worth our time and effort. And the people who exist within that tangle are worth our time and effort. And so, when I hear things that are condemning of the tangle, it sucks, dude. It sucks. And so, this is something that's so emotionally charged, and that it's not necessarily a bad thing, so long that we can agree upon what it means to be human. And I think that's kind of where I'm seeing this big rift, for lack of a better term, is because we don't have a common, and that's sad. We don't have a common basis of, we can stand on the same ground and agree that human life and dignity is worth it.
Yeah.
And so,
I don't even know if it's a rift so much as a void. Like, I think that this is missing from the conversation, because again, I don't think that anyone who's advocating without this piece is doing so on purpose, because they are, making that statement. Like, I don't think that's the case here. I think that it's just something that's being left out because it's hard to include, and because it takes a lot of emotional work
it does take a lot of emotional work. And so often, you and I have also talked about, when we hear the neurodiversity conversation, we often hear, like, the autism is my superpower, like, conversation. And not to be like, I don't want to view level 3 autism with rose-colored glasses, because I know it's not. And I know how hard it is for some families. But that doesn't mean that challenge is not worth it, right? And so, it would be amiss for us, or it would be it would be wrong of us to talk about it without talking about the hard stuff, and it's also wrong of us to talk about it without talking about the good stuff. And so, but the point that I'm trying to drive home is, regardless of the good or regardless of the bad, they're people. And let that be the point that is taken today, is that neurodiversity is wild. And I mean that truly, like in a ecological
Like
sense.
nature,
Like it is
yeah.
in a nature sense. Like it is
Yeah.
wild. The range at which it exists is truly wild. And regardless of what end you find yourself in, regardless of what level of support you need to be able to access and exist, you're worth it. And know that in at least this speech therapist, I see you as the whole person, and I'm not going to be focused on anything other than what you got, if that makes sense, and trying to expand what you got.
Yeah.
In your enjoyment of this beautiful, crazy, messy thing called life. So I don't know. It's gotten really deep and philosophical, and I don't know how I feel about that. So I was not expecting this on a Saturday morning.
Personally, I feel good. And I will say, just to kind of like wrap up this thread that we're on, this is not a call to complacency for high support families. This is not us saying, we get that it's hard, so stop asking for answers. We get that it's hard, so stop asking for, like, no. This is a call to action for other, not just therapists, other people, if you are an individual in this society, this is a call to action to support the severely disabled in your society, because it should never be just the role and the responsibility of the parents of these children who become adults to care for them. It should be our responsibility. I was watching this. Oh, sorry.
No, you're good.
I was watching this show earlier this week about keeping kids safe from predators online. And somebody said the phrase, "There's no such thing as other people's children." And that like really stuck with me, of like, we live in a society, so act like it. Like we live in a society, so we have a responsibility to each other to support the people in our society who need more support.
My phrase, my family, Jack and I's phrase right now have been, if you want a village, you have to be a villager. We've got that straight online, ripped it right off the internet. But, we just moved to a place where we have a lot of friends and we want that community. But in order to have and access that community, you have to be a villager. And so that is including our kids with high support needs. If they are part of this community and they are entitled to that. And so we need other people to come forward, and not just their families, to come through and support them. And so that can be, a whole lot of things, but I just want them to stop being left out of this conversation. Or if they're included in the conversation, I need them to stop being demonized. And that's not even in a like, don't talk about how hard it is way. Like, it is hard. It's hard. It's hard, and I want you to get the help, and I want the families to get the support that they need, and therefore we need to keep talking about it. Please and thank you. So,
yeah.
This did not go the way that I anticipated it to today.
Me neither. I honestly, from like a continuity standpoint, I don't really know how to go from here. This would be, if we stopped here, because I feel like we've kind of wrapped up a conversation. If we stopped here, this would be one of our shorter episodes, which
I know,
is fine.
Which is fine with me, but and I think that's why this is so big, guys. And I think that's why when we talk about neurodiversity, it's just so big. And there is no one way, like fingerprints. There is no one way. And so no one way is right and no one way is wrong. They all exist together, and we all have to deal with that. So in a love and light kind of way. So I don't know.
I know. Oh gosh. Yeah.
I'm trying to find the best.
What do you even want to like talk about next?
I don't know, because you and I talk about this all the time, and so that's I
mean, honestly, like we can, like we don't need to jump the shark. Like we can kind of end our recording here and just be like,
The 20 words or less version of this is that neurodiversity is really big, and right now the conversation is being driven by people who may not have the same lived experience as our friends who can't communicate. And just because my friends can't communicate doesn't mean that their experience is not valid, important, and all of those things. However, conversations are being had about those kids in a way that is not honoring of them. And so that's my neurodiversity TLDR. Too long didn't read, which is if we're going to talk about the kids who have the highest support needs, we need to be talking about them in a way that is honoring of their humanity. And also, intellectual disability is not connected to our worth as people. Thank you and good night. So
yes, very much so. Yeah, stop being mean to my friends.
Stop being mean to my friends.
I love them. Stop it. Yeah.
Stop it.
Yeah.
They're wonderful people.
I know. I think like the next kind of natural place to go here, I do worry about like continuity wise. Like
our narrative retail skills right now, our narrative telling skills are just blown at this point. Like there was not a beginning, middle, and end. This is a fever dream, and this is like welcome to the inner ramblings of Maggie and Francie, because this is
was an emotionally driven episode, and that's okay.
And that's okay.
If you know us as people, this makes a lot of sense.
No, this was a very rambly episode, so apologies for that. But this has just been something that's been on. I know we've been talking a lot about this. We text a lot about this. This has been something that's on our mind literally all week. And so it felt appropriate to kind of put all of that rambling, though messy, into a space for other people to hear, because I want other people to know. This is such a self-important phrase. I want other people to know what I think about. And so
I mean, we started a podcast. Like
we started a podcast. Yeah, that's kind of inherently
a given.
Yeah, that's my mindset on this, and I'm not seeing a lot of that nuance being had in this online conversation, specifically now with the whole that was the Tylenol thing.
Yeah,
because it's only going to get disability is only going to be a bigger conversation going forward. Just the general vibes that I'm getting.
Yeah, and I think something that, and this is maybe even a topic for another day, something that I'm seeing online because I am on purpose trying to tell my algorithm to include high support families, parents of high support kids, because I don't, as much as I value and love and care for my low support autistic people, like we are getting a lot of low support autistic voices right now, and that's fabulous. I want to hear from the others. Absolutely. And so something that I'm seeing a lot is that parents of kids with severe autism are happy that autism is being talked about. They are resonating with what RFK Jr. is saying about autism being. He has used the phrase horror show, which I'm not going to assign that to anybody else and put words in somebody's mouth, but like he's on a public stage saying how hard it is to live with severe autism. And I think that makes a lot of families feel seen when we live in the water of autism as a superpower, right? Mm-hmm. So when you have kids that are self-injuring, biting themselves, injuring their head by hitting it into a wall, like that doesn't feel like a superpower, right? And so these families are seeing their hardship finally being validated and spoken about on a public stage, and are happy that they have any kind of lead into what may have caused this. I would say with gentleness that there is an element of science illiteracy happening there, because while I understand and respect that perspective, the evidence for Tylenol being linked to autism is not strong. And so while, yes, I am glad that it's being talked about in a public sphere, I do think it's lacking dignity. It's lacking care, and it is not scientifically sound. So I'm like, it's not like I'm not like pushing that argument aside. I'm like, I see it. I want it to be better. Like I want this conversation that's happening like in our country to be better because right now I feel like we're barking up the wrong tree. And that's not going to help anybody in the end. So
Truly.
yeah.
Truly. That's really what kicked off this week for us
Yeah.
in this like conversation. Just so you guys get the context and the background of why it's been on the forefront of our minds. This is all that we've been thinking about since that kind of announcement. And so beautifully summed, Maggie. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, lady. I think
I'm tired.
Yeah. Let's wrap it. Let's wrap this up.
Yeah, let's wrap that.
Yeah, like this is obviously a passion topic. If you're watching this on YouTube, comment about what you think. Comment on your thoughts on neurodiversity. If you have lived experience, share it. Like we want to hear it. Be nice, but like we want
be civil. Yeah,
be civil.
We can disagree, but please be civil. Yeah.
We want to be a part of this discussion and have it be just that. Have it be a discussion. So again, that's some of our thoughts on neurodiversity. There's more to talk about, but we're not going to do it today. So
no,
you can find Tell Me About It on YouTube and Spotify. You can find us on Instagram at Tell Me About It SLP, and we will see you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.